Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Weddings Uncovered. So this particular week, I'm speaking to a supplier who I have worked with multiple times, but I've never really uncovered her wedding journey. So this week, I'm really excited to introduce Nisha Mystery of Niche Flowers. Hi Nisha, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, and I have to say, it's such a pleasure to have you on Weddings Uncovered. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this.
No, thank you. The pleasure is all ours, making sure that we could be on as well. Thank you.
So, I mean, for anyone who's not quite aware of, who you are and, what exactly you do, are you able to just take a couple of minutes, just very quickly, to just give them an overview?
I'm Nisha. I'm one of five others from the Niche Flowers family. We are based in the Midlands. We specialise in all things floral. We like to make high impact floral designs for couples, for weddings, events, celebrations. We talking all flowers. We just love talking about them.
I bet there's so many things that I can learn from you in terms of like florals. As you know, I'm like a regular customer of yours anyway, so I can vouch for Nisha. Like the florals are incredible. How did you get into this?
So our backstory was I was on maternity leave with my middle daughter, Himani, who actually is the backbone of Niche Flowers. So I was struggling to let go of my baby. Most mums have that problem, we're maternally attached, and letting go of her was quite a challenge. So my mum suggested I pick up a hobby. And because me and my dad growing up together, we did a lot of gardening. So she suggested, why don't you look at something floral? So I went along to my local flower class and I got that bug and I've never looked back.
God, that sounds incredible. And you're like a family business now, aren't you? So how did that evolve from you kind of picking up this hobby to it growing into an actual family business?
So our journey started in 2015. I think very near your time that you started
Yeah.
your business too. So I think we've shadowed each other as sister
Hmm.
companies in effect. For us, Niche Flowers grew because we were getting more and more interest about our florals. So I was only doing flowers when the girls were growing up for friends and family, like a hobby.
Yeah.
And it was just that passion of just getting my creativity out, getting my me time, getting a bit of holistic mindfulness in, and making it special for me. That gradually grew as the girls realised that people were asking for it. They were like, Mum, we need to do this, we need to do this. So
Oh.
actually the girls pushed me further to advance the business. They came up with a plan and Cam and I just really administered it really and just followed what they were advising. Obviously we took a step back, kept reflecting, and we've just grown from there on. We started off just doing haars and small
Yeah.
posies, and then we started supplying wedding decor companies. We then started doing the direct sales to customers for their decor, and more recently we now do that whole design event styling service too, to make those moments really special, because we love all things design orientated. Florals are a really big impact statements that you can make at your wedding, but they need to reflect you as a couple. And sometimes when you go via a third party, it's not always easy to portray that story and get to know you as a couple. So for me, I think that's the reason we took that step to say, right, we need to talk to couples, get
Yeah.
to understand what their brief is, and design things that are spectacular to them, special to them, and signify their love journey.
I think that's really beautiful, just the way you've put that. And I 100% agree. I mean, florals are such an integral part of, events. Obviously, everyone has different themes and different ideas and vision, and so more so for some couples than others. But yeah, definitely like such a big part nowadays, especially with people looking for more kind of, I think, natural setups. And I think, florals make a big part of that. So as you know, Weddings Uncovered isn't just talking about what you do as a supplier, but it's also talking about your own wedding journey. Like, I love this because at this point, I really get to understand a bit more about all these incredible suppliers who I've networked with or worked with, but I've never really asked these questions. So I just feel like it brings us closer together, and people just genuinely enjoy learning about your story too. So let's kind of rewind back to when you were a bride. So can you like, first of all, remember that? I know it may have been a couple of years. So tell me, how long ago was it, and what was that journey like for you as a bride?
So Cam and I both started planning our wedding in 1998. 98.
Yeah.
He proposed on London Bridge. I do not recommend that to anybody unless it's
Why not?
empty. Because he did it on New Year's Eve and there were so many people around us on the bridge. It was lovely. It was special how he whispered to me. However, there was a lot of crowd, and those of you that do know me, being in front of the camera, being in the public centre of attention isn't very me. So that was very emotional, if not to say the least.
Did you get like cheers and like people looking at you from the crowd? What was that like, that moment?
So our friend circle were around, they were all prepared for it, so they all reacted, and that was really, really lovely. And then as it was like whispers as it was going round, and with the firework display you can't really hear anything, but there's just crowds being very loud, and that's why I don't recommend it for people. But it was a lovely moment. So that's where we started planning our journey. Started from January, and we took a 6-month approach to our original date that we set. We had 2 family weddings in the same year. So my sister got married and had her events spaced out. So in a year, I think we had 4 large events, plus all the pre-wedding events going on between the 2 sisters. So it was quite an emotional time for my parents to let go of both of us. But the planning side, because she was planning, I knew what I didn't want, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because she was having the larger wedding, she was having 1,000, I think 1,100 guests. I wanted something smaller, but I couldn't get the small. I got half of that. I think we only had 600 guests at our wedding, but that was a mission with my parents. And I think in 98, when we were going to get married, that was the biggest challenge there. Making sure that we could have the numbers we wanted and the way we wanted it. I think the thing that people need to remember about planning your own wedding is, it's lovely that it's a wedding about you two, but it's a wedding about your families coming together as well. And in those days it was more prominent to make sure that the weddings were about the families, who you invited, how you addressed people, how you welcomed the parties. And as much as we do take that attention now in weddings, it's just a very different way of doing things. So it was very different to have a lot of input from our parents about our big day.
I mean, just listening to that, actually, a couple of things have cropped up to me. First of all, the fact that you got married in the same year as a sibling, because it's still not that uncommon. I do have some couples who either they're getting married in the same year as a sibling, or they're waiting for a sibling to get married, or the sibling's getting married after them. How did you cope with that? Like, was there ever a moment for you? Like, was there any kind of competition, or were you guys super close? Or, you know, what was it like, for example, if you were close to sisters, what was it like for your sister's partner and your partner? Like, were there ever any clashes, or how did you go about that, making sure that it was individual to the both of you?
So because we both knew what we wanted, and we are very strong-minded, both of us are close, you know, we've grown up sharing a room together, spending lots of time. For us, it was about just communicating and making sure that we heard each other's ideas. Our partners didn't really mix or get to know each other until she got married, to be honest. It was just one of these things. There was a lot of tension in our families, purely on the basis that it was going to be 2 weddings. We didn't actually get married according to the Indian calendar in the same year, but in the English calendar, we were in the same financial year. Same year. But for us, it was very much about just talking through our ideas. It made it easier for me because they'd already planned their wedding in advance. So they'd got their February wedding sorted, their civil ceremony, then they'd got their Asian wedding happening. And it was actually at my sister's wedding that I actually did the florals. They were the first pieces of florals I did. So even before I'd had Himani, I'd done some posies. I'd worked for a florist in town, just did a bit of volunteering work, and I ended up making my sister's posy arrangements.
That's
For
really
the guests.
beautiful. It's funny because a lot of suppliers I speak to, they do start off having just had some sort of experience even within their own wedding, or, you know, a very close family member, and they just say, oh, I loved that. And even though it's not a career right away, it's your first kind of experience of, you know, doing that within that wedding industry environment. And I just think that's so beautiful. So one of the other things you mentioned, which is so relevant even today, I know, you know, you actually cut down your guest list to about 600, which you know, nowadays would be a very large wedding. But that same issue still applies to a lot of couples who are getting married. So nowadays they've obviously tried to reduce their guest list to a lot less. But how did you navigate that with your parents? Was it easier because you had a sibling and actually your sister just had everybody at her wedding, so you could say, look, you've invited who you want, they're coming to that one, you know, let me just have less? Or, you know, were there any issues there? Like, how did you do that? Because I think that is going to be so important for people to hear.
So I think for us it was challenging to get the numbers right, and actually we have a big friend circle, so both hubby and I, our friend circle is enormous. We don't just have one group of friends. Plus trying to meet, getting the work colleagues included, having mum and dad's friends, and plus our family is big. I'm one of 5 daughters, so the extended family is bigger. My parents are of big families as well, so it was very difficult reining it in. However, we stuck to the rule that Bav could have everybody she wanted, but she would have all the, we have to invite this person because they invited us to our wedding. But because I was getting married and my season helped me, I was getting married late November.
Right.
The weather really had an impact. So people who may necessarily want to travel in, might be traveling further a distance. They were reluctant to come. Darker nights, darker days, gloomier weather actually played to our advantage. So we didn't get the guests that possibly, you know, the first invite list went out. The other thing was that my parents had come to accept at that point that the guests needed to have some meaning and representation to us. These were conversations that we had very closely with my mum and dad, saying, you know, it's lovely to invite everybody, but this day is about us as a family. You're letting me go, and I want it to be special. And about that, I don't need all these people to bear witness to that. I just need your blessings. I need my in-laws' blessings, and I just want my sisters there. And my Massey was adamant she was going to be there, so that one person. But she was like the you know, grandmother figure, so that, you know, helped. But it was they cut out all our other relatives from abroad. My parents decided we weren't going to invite. So currently, in this current climate, a lot of people think can't do that. But actually, we made that difficult decision to say we didn't want people spending extortionate amounts of money to come across to see us get married. We would make the trip to abroad and go and visit our family eventually at some point in our lives and celebrate that day. That was the way we approached our wedding.
I think that's lovely, and it's a nice way of looking at it too, because actually we sometimes forget how expensive weddings can be, not for like couples and the families, but for other people, guests in general, who are like flying out. And as much as everybody would love to be a part of the day, not everybody can afford it. And I think that is something that nowadays a lot of people are becoming more mindful of, but that's definitely something that they can do. And I love that you just said we got married in November, so, you know, just cut people out because they didn't want to travel in. So there we go, winter weddings, that is the way forward. So I mean, just talking a bit more about some of the fun elements of the day, what would you say is one of your most like memorable events, or, you know, just a beautiful memory? Like when I talk about your wedding or ask about your wedding, what comes to mind? What's the first?
I think for both of us it's quite funny because it's the moment that I actually walked into it wasn't my entrance, it's when I got to the mandap. So you have your underbud, the scarf, the shawl that hides you and your partner from seeing each other, and this hand slipped under, but it was like Homer Simpson's hand. It was yellow, it was still stained with pitti. And I looked at it and I was like reluctant to put my hand on it, going, oh my God, I'm going to get yellow on my mehndi. I'd really looked after my hands, but his hands were just completely tattered. And I was going, right, he's had a fight, he's had that lovely turmeric paste, but is he really calm? Because I haven't seen him. But that moment where we actually did join hands, we did have a little bit of a tug, and for the shawl as well, and it was just a very special moment. I had my younger sister sitting next to me, he had his best man, and the jokes that were flying across the shawl, the banter felt like a wedding.
I love that. You know, I've actually been asked a couple of times, what's my favourite moment as a wedding planner? And there are so many, like, you'll know, you're part of events, and it's really hard to choose. But one of the most, I think, special moments is that moment with the antarpat. I think just having the bride walk down the aisle, seeing the groom's reaction, like at that moment, like no matter where I'm at or what I'm doing, I will just make sure that I'm there in the room, because it's just one of my just favorite kind of special moments that I get to see, because that's a reaction that you just don't get to witness again, and it's so beautiful. And I just love that you've picked that. So I mean, just going back to your wedding, were there any like challenges that you faced in the planning process? Not so much with the family, because obviously we know about the guest numbers, and that might have been a bit of a challenge for you, but is there anything more so in the actual wedding planning process, finding suppliers or navigating suppliers or choosing things, like anything that you found difficult at the time?
So my dad comes from an artist background. He was an artist in
Wow.
Africa. So his eye for detail is something that I relied on quite a lot growing up. He picked my wedding outfit before I'd seen my wedding outfit. So I think
Wow.
that was quite a challenge to try and say to Dad, hold on, it's my day, I want to pick my outfit.
Yeah.
But actually he did a fantastic job with both of my outfits. The colour we chose for my civil ceremony was a deep burgundy wine. It's more going into the purple Bordeaux colour,
Yeah.
but a very prominent purple. And we couldn't find flowers that complemented my bouquet. So actually my floral challenge was my biggest setback for my civil ceremony. And the way I dealt with that really was to approach it that I'd only have hints of the purple coming through in my bouquet.
Yeah.
I'll stick to ivories, and I didn't want that whole gold. I didn't want a artificial bouquet. I wanted fresh flowers, but the flowers needed to have meaning for me. So I did choose fragrant freesias. I did have roses. I avoided lilies. I went for ranunculus, but I went to a florist who grew her own flowers. So I actually went somewhere just on the border of Leicester, and my sister introduced me to a lady who grew her florals, and that is just what made it special. I never thought I'd use leather leaf in a bridal bouquet, but I did have leather leaf in a bridal bouquet. But it made me stronger to go, right, that is not how I'm going to do flowers, but this is lovely enough for me. So the florals was a challenge. And it was the same challenge with the Indian ceremony, because there were only limited people who made hars and garlands. And I was dead against having that foil going underneath.
Oh, I
And
forgot that even existed.
but guess what? I had to have it. I had to have it, and I cringed at the moment of it. But the photos, the photographer did a very good job hiding the foil. And we did have layers. In those days, you didn't just garland once, you garland twice. So we had 2 lots of garlands on us. So we were quite padded out.
Yeah.
And I think that was quite funny, seeing as, you know, we still say we were flower clowns.
Which is very like relevant, considering, you know, you're in the business of florals, so it's fine. I mean, how do you think weddings have changed from like when you got married to now, when you're seeing all these beautiful weddings with brides and grooms? Like, what are the key differences that spring to mind for you?
I think couples are being very clear on what they want. They're having very clear communication with their suppliers. They're defining their brief better, which I have to say over the years, they've relied more on what is available. This is what's available. This is what you should have. Whilst I think we were very forward in going, well, yeah, that's what you've got, but you've got to make it look different for our wedding. We don't want the same as everybody else has. We wanted a walkway. The way I walked in, I didn't walk in, I got carried in, was something different. Again, very embarrassing, but to some brides, they'd be like, oh my God, they're carrying me. But my brothers and brother-in-laws were very, very elegant with the way they did it. They just didn't want my dainty feet to touch the floor and just be that fairy being escorted to the mandap. So it was very moving to have people add those little sentiments to my day. But decor wise, there was that bit of, you'd have the same cream embroidery, you'd have the same gold mandap, you'd still have the ivory, and florals didn't play a big part in those days. So we didn't actually have mandap walkway flowers. I did have some petals down, and focus was on the DJ. My DJ wanted to be on my stage. It was hilarious, because having that conversation on the phone in the morning going, nah, your setup needs to be on the left hand side of that hall, and the stages for the mandap
Yeah.
was quite a funny conversation.
Today is not about you, it's about us as a couple.
Yeah. And that was quite funny. I look back and Cam looks back at it and we always laugh going, we had that chat in the morning on the mobile when you should have been getting ready. So that's a big change. You know, your suppliers, you have that conversation with them, you have that debrief before, so you can have peace of mind. Had I have had that wedding planner at my wedding, the coordinator, I wouldn't have had to deal with that myself. But that was the thing. Cam and I kept a lot of the stuff that we organised in our control. Yeah. And for our time of, even though our parents were giving a lot of input, we were in control of which suppliers we booked. But that was because Cam had that background of weddings before we got married. He'd worked in the industry, and I had helped at weddings and helped people freelance to do a little bit of floral work. So I did get an idea of what Indian weddings were like, and I was the 4th person in our family getting married.
So you'd had enough experience by then to figure out, actually, this is what works, this is what doesn't, this is what we're going to do, which is great. So, I mean, if you had your time all over again, and who knows, you may renew your vows, but, you know, if you could do it all over again, is there anything you would change?
I don't think we would. I think for us, and this is why we won't go to renew vows, I keep saying I secretly want to, but because that day is our day, it encapsulated everything. We had the snow, we had the weather, we had our Jan arrive an hour and a half earlier than they needed to. There was those hiccups and challenges, but everybody was made to feel part of our wedding day. And I think, one, I can't bring back those people that were there. We lost a lot of loved ones. But secondly, the day was still special. It was about me and Cam. And when I was on and in my mandap, that's all that mattered. You know, the fact that that emotion building up of when your father gives you away, I don't think you could recreate that again. That experience happens once. So those moments are really, really special. But if I did and had, if Cam says it, let's renew vows, then I think I would be, the mood board would be out there. And I think the girls would have a lot of say. I think my girls would be planning my wedding, not me.
No, that's really beautiful. And do you have any advice for couples who are getting married now?
Under the current climate, I would say prioritise what's important to you. What is of value and importance? Is it who you have as your supplier? Who is it, your guests? Is it about the two of you? What is it that's important? I think another point that I would make really strongly is that just because guests are limited doesn't mean that you can't have a lovely time. You can make those moments special. I mean, Cam had hidden his money in his saffron for my sister when she stole the shoes. That was quite a nice, small little treat. They stole the hat because they couldn't have the shoes. But that meant that they already got the money, so the negotiations.
Yes.
So there are lots of little elements you can bring in. Say your story, think about your vows, how you're going to be saying them, and don't hesitate and frown to question your suppliers, and don't rush into things. It's okay to take a step back.
Yeah, no, that is really great advice there. Well, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you. And before I let you go, how do people get in touch with you if they would like to inquire about your services?
So our floral handle is @nicheflowers. Our website is www.niche.wedding, and we also have the Niche Weddings platform on Instagram as well, which is just @nicheweddings.
Great, thank you so much. It has been such a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Take care.
Take care. Bye now.